Thank you, Wally. Good morning, everyone. How you doing? This is quite a scene here in the middle of New York, Midtown. You get the full New York experience with the police sirens and the ambulances in the back. And it's great to be here. This is my home, where I was born and raised. So thank you for the introduction, Wally. And yes, I do still practice karate. I've been doing so for 10 years. And that's why we like to use the analogy of the ninjas or samurais, as you'll see throughout the presentation, to depict essentially all the different, not only areas of digital marketing, but all the different levels of knowledge and information and tactical strategies that one can learn and implement in this area. The analogy from karate is that I've been practicing for 10 years myself, and there's always something new to learn. And at the beginning of every class, when we start with, what do we start with? We start with the basics. Just like in sports, you stretch and work on the basics, and it's the same. There's 17 hand techniques, 13 foot techniques, and everything else you do as you progress goes back to some combination of the basics. So that's something to keep in mind as we're here today, to continue learning and building upon the knowledge that I'm sure everyone in this room has some level of. And before I get in deeper into the presentation, a little bit about the purpose. So I've been running an agency, Blue Liner, for about 12 years now, and we developed this methodology, this framework, in order to help not just our own staff, but help clients to understand all the different options that exist for them in this rapidly changing world of marketing, and especially the digital side. So let's go into it a little bit. 7 is obviously the key number here. It's a pretty special number. A lot of things come to mind. You have the 7 seas, the 7 continents, the 7 heavens. And we actually started years back with 6 pillars, and then social media and mobile came about, and we ended up at 7. What you actually see in the background here, you may not be able to see it from the back, but it's actually a bunch of little people. 7 obviously represents a big number for our planet as well, right? We have 7 billion on the planet. And what's interesting in this day and age, and every day even more so, is how interconnected we all are. So think about that for a minute. We have 7 billion on the planet, and this device that I'm sure we all have one of here, there's about 5.5 billion of these mobile devices in the planet right now. So sometime over the next 5 years, we'll cross the threshold where there'll actually be more mobile devices than people in the planet, although the population is growing as well. I'm sure a lot of people here have more than one of these as well. So what's the point? The point is that we're more interconnected than ever. Okay, so everything is connected and everyone is connected. And that means the world is your market. So I can pick up my phone right now and call any of you in this room, or I can also pick up the phone and call my teammates in China or India or anywhere on the exact other side of the planet. And that's pretty amazing. That's something that hasn't been possible maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So when it comes to marketing, and obviously we all have our different niches and industries, and that's part of what the 7 pillars deals with, is starting to segment this entire ecosystem so that we can all understand what our place is in this wild world of marketing. Okay, so another way to say this, which is a little less marketing speak, and some of the other talks that I give are on time management and also personal spiritual development. So another way to say the same thing here is not everything, but everyone is connected, and the world is not just our market, but it's our home. So what is the 7 pillars? As noted, it's a framework, it's a system, it's a methodology for approaching marketing and understanding how to essentially optimize whatever it is you're trying to do. We've already heard this morning 2 fantastic presentations and that actually represents 2 of the 7 pillars. Social being pillar 6, I'll show the whole list shortly, and content being the first pillar. There's no particular order that one pillar is more important than the other. They're all critical. And as marketers, it's our responsibility to think about each of them and then understand, again, what position or what approach we want to take in that. So let's get into it. And again, before I actually present what the actual 7 pillars are, because the framework here, I mean, we can be here all day if I was going to share all the details of the framework, and that's probably for a different workshop. But I'm really going to give you the highest possible level today, so you can just understand what all the basics are. There is a book that I'm writing on the topic, which I'll share the link with you at the end. It's not done yet, but the first 30 pages of the book are actually available online as an ebook right now. So all the same information is available there, and also the flash drives that you have in your welcome package there in Web Congress has the same presentation. So feel free to take pictures and tweet it and save it, but you'll have the information in the flash drive. The point here is that, at least my belief in marketing is that we have to approach it from a principled standpoint. As we know in SEO, there's black hat, there's white hat, there's all kinds of the conversation that we just had about authentic content versus pushy, salesy information. There's, as we know, in sales and marketing, there's all different ways you can play. I'm a strong believer that a principled approach makes sense from an ethical standpoint, and that's actually the third principle here, kind of the holistic principle. So that essentially means between the client, between an agency, between the end consumers. When we're marketing a product, there's a promise. That product has a promise. You'll see in this day and age people talking about sustainability and more of the essence behind what's actually in the can or the bottle. And so that sustainability ethic, that holistic premise is one of our principles. The first principle here is proactive time management. So as we stand here today, trying to take in all this knowledge, and as we approach our clients, if you're an agency, one of the key things we have to do is understand how long it takes to get things done. And that's a key question that I, as my team knows, and some of them are here, that I try to impress upon our agency. So if you're a designer and there's a new web design project, the first question I'll ask the designer is, well, how long do you think it's going to take based on what this client wants? And it's a very difficult question. So this is a bit of self-knowledge that we have to try to pay attention to, which is why, one of the reasons why I think time tracking is important, not from a micromanagement standpoint, but from a self-knowledge standpoint. So the more we pay attention to what we do, how long it takes us to get things done, the more self-knowledge and the better we can be, even as managers, as a project manager, if you understand the different members of your team and their different tendencies. Some people take a little bit longer to get things done, but they still produce great results. So proactive time management, being ROI driven, and I won't go all the way down the list here, but you can take a look. So these are the 7 core principles that we pay attention to, and these are the 7 pillars. Again, we've already covered content, and the rest of the day, I'm sure we'll be touching upon all the components here, but there's really nothing that you can possibly be doing in digital marketing that doesn't fall under one or more of these categories. Okay, so we have content, design, search, and when we say search, we don't just mean SEO on Google. I mean, the search is a principle that exists across any website you go to, from Amazon, where you're looking for gifts for the holidays, to real estate sites. What's the first thing you do when you go in? You filter the details of what you're seeking, and you put some keywords in that search bar. So it's not just the search engines here. The principle of search is one of the cores of all digital marketing. Media, which entails all forms of spending, from affiliate marketing, retargeting, display, video ads, CRM, which deals with any level of customer relationship management, from the minute someone hits your website, and as a view in your Google Analytics, they're part of your CRM, whether or not you have their information yet. And that goes into the retention strategy and building that relationship once you do have a connection, a relationship with the consumer. And obviously pillar 6 and pillar 7, social and mobile. So when this model started 12 years back, at the beginning of Blue Liner, we didn't even have mobile in this list. And social was really just kind of just starting out at that time. So that just shows how quickly this is evolving. I'm hoping going forward, we really don't know, do we? But I believe this framework can last for at least another 10 years before we have to start looking at some space age technology that none of us even can think about right now. So going a little further, I'm going to shift gears slightly here into traditional marketing, because the conversation that was happening 7-8 years ago about like digital getting its respect and getting the budgets, that conversation is kind of done now. Everyone knows digital's here, it's here to stay, it's a major part of any and every marketing campaign. But what's happening now, at least I've sensed it, and when you talk to clients, you see it, that we're kind of forgetting about the core values of traditional marketing. So we've also created a pillars kind of nomenclature and framework here for traditional marketing. You can see the items here. And let's not forget that everything that's happening in digital is an evolution of the core foundational principles of traditional marketing, which include content and advertising and PR and sales. I know that someone back in the day tried to separate sales from marketing, and there's always this kind of fight between sales and marketing, but George, as you said, it's about selling at the end. So what we do in marketing is about setting up for the sale ultimately and for the ROI. So in our model, sales is an integral part of traditional marketing. So you'll see here, by the way, D1 and D2 kind of next to everything here, going back. That's basically represents the 7 dimensions. So sticking with the 7 theme, the pillars themselves are the first dimension, and then I'm slowly introducing you to the additional dimensions. And again, we're not going to have time today to go in depth into all of them, but I just want to give everyone a bit of a flavor for the model, and then talk about how you can apply it to yourself as a professional, to your website, to your company, and to your clients if you're on the agency side. So the second dimension are the modes, or they can also be known as the stages. So basically, if you take, let's say, a pillar, let's say search marketing, or any pillar, you'll have to actually go through all these modes. There's a brainstorming stage where we're just throwing ideas at the wall and trying to figure out what the goals are, what we're trying to get done. And then we go into, and it doesn't have to happen in this order, but these modes are things that we will jump in and out of throughout the life of our marketing operation. ROI includes budgeting, it includes goal setting. It's not just about the financials, right? It's about things like brand awareness, how consumers feel about your brand, so there's softer KPIs as well. It's not just all about the pure ROI being financially driven, although that's probably most important. There's strategy, and then there's things we don't talk about often at conferences, even like this. It's, who are the people and what are the tools that we're using, or are there any constraints when it comes to that? And this is where the levels comes in, the level of knowledge. You can have a great strategy, you can have a great budget, everything is lining up, but you don't have the right people executing that have the proper knowledge. Or maybe you do have the right people, but they're not using the optimal tools. And that's where things can go wrong in execution. Okay, and then the 7th mode is analytics. And the analytics is really like the brain of the entire process. It's the constant management of big data and web analytics. And so there has to be a team in place that's always analyzing what's happening so that you can optimize the campaigns at the end of the day. Okay, so when we take the first pillar, the first dimension, which is the pillars, and then we map it against the second dimension, which is the modes, we get something called the 49er matrix. Okay, so it's a 7x7 grid, which I hope you can see here. And within that grid, we basically have 49 different areas to consider and to think about what we're doing. So if we look here, let's see what we have. We have the third pillar, search, and the third mode, which is strategy. And what we can do with this matrix is we can evaluate and audit how we're doing. You know, we sit down with clients and we do this, and we say, okay, how are we doing in each area? And also, who's handling each area? Who's actually in charge of search analytics or mobile tools? You know, do we have the right tools for mobile? Okay, so this grid is we're actually building an app for this as we speak, which will allow us to literally click into each box and get, okay, what are the 5 questions I need to ask myself for this particular block or this particular mode or pillar. And then you can also take strategy notes in there, ask questions, and make assignments so that when the whole team sits together, we can all look at who's responsible and also how they're doing. So this is something interesting. It's the same kind of grid, but what you can see is you can see dots that denote whether we're doing well. We'll use a green dot that this is effective, it's meeting the benchmarks, whatever the goals were before the campaign. Red, obviously we know yellow is more so-so, and there's also a gray dot here for something that hasn't been addressed yet. So if we just haven't even thought about the mobile strategy, we're not necessarily failing, but it's something that we're not really paying attention to as of yet. Again, this does get very granular, so I'm trying to just keep it at a bit of a high level right now. And I think as you go throughout the rest of the day here and you get some of the tactical insights from the other speakers, you can keep kind of coming back to this model and seeing how it fits in, how pretty much everything we're covering throughout the session here will fit into this framework in some way or another. So this goes into the fourth mode, which is about people and HR. And it's something that, again, running an agency for the last 10 plus years and dealing with all different types of personalities. You know, some people are introverted and like to work in an isolated fashion. A lot of designers can sometimes be that way, and some of the more technical folks, the programmers. And some people like to and need to interact and get feedback constantly. So we really have to think about the different marketing personality types that are out there amongst all of us. I'm sure if we took a poll in this room and everyone did a survey, we'd probably be mixed and all over the road here. You have your number crunchers, your information gatherer, hunter, which is more of a sales, outbound-oriented, interactive person, the farmers, which are people that manage others and manage projects, the idea man or woman, you know, people that like to come up with ideas and do a lot of brainstorming, but don't necessarily like to get their hands dirty in the details when it comes time to get those ideas implemented, which is okay, because then you have the doers and the people that don't necessarily generate the best ideas or don't even like to think about new ideas. They just want to be given a spec and then they'll execute it. And then you have your visionaries, which is usually some combination of idea person and one or two of the others. So again, it's a good exercise in your own company, and if you're doing HR or bringing new people on, try to find that balance. Because if you have too many idea people in a room, you get a great brainstorming session, but then nothing gets done. So you've got to try to find that mix. The 7 levels is basically a system similar to the karate system where we look at each area and say, okay, is this SEO 101, you know, basics, meta tags, keyword research, or, you know, is it something more sophisticated? And what does a particular situation need? and then making sure that you're matching the needs to the people that are working on it. And that's something that's happening. It's pretty much happening everywhere. At every company, there's mismatches that are happening where someone's being given a task that's possibly above their level. It doesn't mean they can't get there, but we have to take that into account. And something that, so what goes into determining the level that any of us are at? I mean, again, the karate analogy that I've been practicing for 10 years and I'm still not a black belt. I'm just one level below, I'm a brown belt, but it's, I'm on my way. And it takes time to really progress. And something that in our field that exists is a lot of these certifications are out there. You can be a Google AdWords professional. And what does that really mean? If you're an AdWords professional, does that mean you're, what I'm trying to say is that the certification and the test taking is just one of many ways to determine one's level. So something I'm encouraging is the people who are in leadership positions, who've been in the industry for a while, to really take on and mentor others and kind of play that sensei type of role where you can help someone develop and really work with them to understand where they are and where they're trying to go and how to get there. So it creates a bit of a professional development track, so to speak. And it's something we're doing as well within the model. We're helping define what really determines when you get from, let's say, brown belt to black belt. All right, I'm gonna go through this a bit. The fourth dimension is basically the angles, and the angle is essentially what your particular angle is, so to speak, as you come into marketing. So there's a management angle, there's a venture angle. Those of you here, someone on the prior panel was in a startup, so they're coming at social media or content marketing from a venture-minded mindset versus a designer that's always thinking purely creative versus a programmer that's always going to be taking a technical angle, even when they're working on a web design or a content experience. A lot more detail, which I'll skip through. And I'll end here, and then I'll give a little more information on how to follow up and gain, really try to integrate this process into your own professional track or company. We have this pyramid of knowledge here, which basically charts out the levels of knowledge with the different angles. So, what it's trying to depict here for the visual is that there's different ways to kind of move up and increase your knowledge. So again, I'm not a programmer, for example, so my angle is really marketing and management. But someone who doesn't have any management knowledge and doesn't want to manage other people, sticks purely to design or technology, can also ascend, to just as high a level and be considered, let's say, a black belt or a blue belt, which is highest in our channel here. Through a completely different approach, or a different side of the pyramid. Okay, so we try to use visuals here to kind of give some cues and take all the information that the 49er matrix and 7 pillars and the dimensions entail and make it a little more digestible. I hope that if you download the ebook, that will reiterate some of these visuals and give a little more content to that. These are the 7 dimensions. We only were able to get through the first 4 here, and then the final 3 dimensions are the markets, the industries, because if you look at, let's say, healthcare versus travel and tourism versus fashion, everything's going to be tweaked a little bit. There's different best practices that apply to different industries and different markets as well. And the last dimension there is time, which is a good cue because I'm probably close to out of time. But the point of this is that what works today isn't necessarily what's going to work in marketing tomorrow. And it's certainly not what worked yesterday. So things are changing faster than ever. We have to be ready for that. That's part of the reason we've created a model like 7 pillars so that as things change, we still have core principles and a core framework to manage that change. Okay, so change management is a big part of this. So let's take again search and SEO, for example, with Panda and Penguin and all the different updates and algorithm changes. You know, maybe how we used to do link building last year to get first page results doesn't quite apply. So we have to be very nimble, which is again goes back to the core principles, very agile, and we have to constantly pay attention to how trends are happening. And I believe Michael in his presentation this morning said it's never too late to be early, right? So I think it insinuates the same type of concept here, that we have to not rest on our laurels if we think we have something down. We always have to keep an eye on what's coming next and try to be ahead of that trend. And hopefully this model will be one of the contributors to what helps us all do that and become better marketers. So I'm going to leave it at that. There's a couple of links. There's information here for my email, my Twitter handle. Feel free to reach out directly if you have any other questions. And I'll be here throughout the day as well if you want to discuss it in further depth. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day in New York.